might not all have the same favorite Mission Impossible movie, but we probably all have the same least favorite. One of my favorite franchises of all time has come to a close. The Mission Impossible movies have been very special for me. I don't think there's any movies that are exactly like theirs. Even it has this distinctive style compared to James Bond, and I think they're even more reliable in quality, these ones. They've got adventure, they've got practical effects, they've got great team dynamics, amazing globe-trotting stunts, usually some world-ending stakes, and of course, lots and lots of Tom Cruise running. My first ever exposure to the franchise was actually I watched Ghost Protocol on a flight when I was, I think, 10 years old, and I really enjoyed it. And all the ones after that I saw in theaters, starting with Rogue Nation, which I actually saw on opening day in 2015 at the BFI IMAX in London. And now, just about 10 years later, I watched The Final Reckoning in theaters this weekend in IMAX as well. And as we reflect on this amazing journey we've gone on with Ethan Hunt throughout the years, I'm here to reveal my ranking of all 8 movies in the Mission Impossible series. Starting at number 8 with Mission Impossible 2. Like I said in the beginning, we probably all have this one at the bottom, and if you don't, that's totally cool, but this is the one that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb in the franchise, and is the only one that I'd call a bad movie that didn't click with me. It does have the cool rock climbing scene, but that's about it. I feel like the editing and action in this one are overly aggressive. Everything with the conflict and characters is super not memorable at all. Even Tandy Wayne Newton, who I think is a wonderful actress that Hollywood is yet to figure out how to utilize these days after Westworld, which one of my favorite TV performances of all time, but even she is not like that memorable here, considering I think Cruise has had better chemistry with other actors later on in the franchise. But yeah, this is one where I just wouldn't recommend it to anyone. I would never rewatch it personally, or even scenes from it, honestly. At number 7 is Mission Impossible, the original that started it all from 1996, directed by Brian De Palma. 30 years later, these movies have become so bombastic with their ambitions, but when you go back to the beginning, when it was just Ethan getting chased on a train by a dude on a helicopter, and that was it, like, it's still really good. The original really holds up, whether it's the tension in the beginning with Ethan and his whole team getting betrayed and sort of plucked off one by one, or him having to evade his superiors, including Henry Czerny as Eugene Kittredge, who's also in this newest movie. And I do like the twist at the end with John Voight's character. Maybe in today's standards it's extremely predictable, but I think it works in this movie, and the way he and Jean Reno show off against Ethan Hunt. Number 6 is Mission Impossible 3. I rewatched this one, I think a little bit before Dead Reckoning came out a couple years ago, and I appreciated it even more. I feel like it's so exciting. It gets into that groove of Ethan and the IMF pulling off heists with impossible tasks and espionage and disguises and so on. There's some solid supporting players here, including Billy Crudup, Lawrence Fishburne. I really like Ethan's relationship with Julia here and how that gets complicated. But the standout is Philip Seymour Hoffman, not just among the film, but among the franchise's villains, honestly. He is so good, at times unhinged. He gives some shocking and nail-biting scenes here. Number 5 is Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. It's got that iconic Burj Khalifa scene that multiple generations have like ingrained in their heads. Beyond that, I just love the visual style here and the genuine feeling that they're completely betrayed and have nowhere to go and no one to trust, and the IMF is completely alone, which I think every other movie after that does. Like, there's no movie where the IMF is just, you know, working together with the authorities. No, it's always like they're fugitives on the run. The Kremlin scene is awesome with like the fake screen that makes it look like they're not there. All the different missions in this film, there's a real adventurousness that Brad Bird brings to it, as they're trying to stop Kurt Hendricks, who I think is, besides the villain from the second one, probably the weakest villain, because he gets like the least to do. And Michael Nyqvist, rest in peace, I don't think they gave him like too much memorable material here, even though that final action scene in that big parking lot is really memorable. This is the movie that I really feel breathed new light into the franchise. It modernized it, and it made it this cultural stamp that it is now. I feel like it paved the way for what Rogue Nation onwards did. Number 4 is Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I'm just still wowed by the experience of it and the pure enjoyment of watching this movie in IMAX. Yes, I have some issues with the movie. The first half in particular, there is a lot of disorienting editing when it comes to showing you flashbacks from the past movies to remind you what's going on in this one. Like the first time you see Pom Clementieff's character, like you see the last thing that happened to her in Dead Reckoning, and it's like, okay, we saw this movie, we don't need it. And there are probably a lot of people who haven't seen or don't remember all the past movies and need to jog their memory about who's who and what's what, but I feel like the editing did it in a bloated way that could have been trimmed down. Like, you didn't need to go back to these scenes as many times as we did. And if you thought Fallout and Dead Reckoning were complicated and hard to understand on the first watch, yeah, this movie, like, sometimes I had a lot of trouble following and piecing together all the logic, and some things are very underexplained, particularly some stuff about Ethan's backstory that was hinted at in the last movie and we don't really touch on here. In Dead Reckoning, Isai Morales became one of my favorite villains in this series. I don't think he was as imposing here, not just because he isn't given as much screen time, but he also becomes a little bit cartoonish at times. But now let's get to the good. It is huge. It is massive. It is breathtaking. The stunts, the action, the editing. I mean, Christopher McQuarrie, like, no one else could have directed 4 of these movies and continue to reinvent them. There are some set pieces where I'm like, yeah, this is everything the franchise has been leading up to. Like, this amount of like audacity of stunts for an actor or any stuntsman to do. The supporting cast is mostly good. Haley Atwell kind of blends into the ensemble as opposed to like really standing out as one of the leads in the last film. Simon Pegg and Pom Clementieff, I think, do stand out, and especially Angela Bassett, who is fantastic here, reprising her role as then CIA Director Erica Sloan in Fallout, but now is the President of the United States. I really liked the way they explored her dynamic with Ethan in a deeper way, but also her more as a leader and as a person. So yes, I do have some glaring issues with the script and the editing in the first hour, but once it gets great, it gets great. It's just a sheer spectacle, and it's like you feel like you have to exhale once you get to the end of this incredible ride, and I'm personally really satisfied overall with this as a finale. Number 3 is Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation. This is the first one I saw on the big screen, and it is just awesome. Not a minute of this movie is wasted. It starts off with already the franchise's biggest stunt at the time, which is Ethan Hunt hanging off of a plane. Seeing the BTS of that at the time was mind-blowing. I want to say the colors really stand out in this movie, whether it's in the Opera House, which is a wonderful scene, or like the blue sky when Ethan is riding his motorcycle through Morocco. And most importantly, we got to meet Ilsa Faust for the first time, with Rebecca Ferguson being my favorite of the female badasses in this franchise. Number 2 is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. I really struggled with which ones to place at number 2 and number 1 because it's varied across different times. I think, like, when it comes to the strongest reaction upon getting out of the theater after watching the movie for the first time, Dead Reckoning would be number 1. In terms of the best, I think maybe that title goes to another movie, but I think Dead Reckoning is so awesome because it's trying to top what came before all the time, and I think successfully so. Whether it's the complex story with an entity entering the picture, or the amazing, you know, car chases, the train stuff, the motorcycle jump is one of the best moments in action movie history. And I think for a lot of reasons, this is my favorite action movie of the 2020s so far. But just the direction, I think, is the main reason. The score by Lorne Balfe is, I think, the best of the series here. The tension really pushes all the characters to their breaking points, and it doesn't end on like a annoying cliffhanger and like a we'll see you in part 2, but it actually kind of wraps up the story for this movie pretty well, while leaving a lot of plot threads and the main conflict still open for resolution in the final reckoning. But as a 3-act movie, you still feel like you're watching a full Mission Impossible film. And number 1 is Mission Impossible Fallout. Maybe a top 10 action movie of all time, a movie I've watched 4 times and keep discovering new things about. Again, I really feel like Fallout and Dead Reckoning are completely tied for me, but I think maybe just from a script and conflict perspective, Fallout is so complex. Even like the marketing made it look like Ethan was gonna turn to the dark side in this one before the movie came out. You could take each action scene on its own and dissect it as like a landmark in filmmaking. But this movie has the parachute scene, the helicopters, the running through London, the motorcycle chase, everything. And spoiler alert, I hope you've seen Mission Impossible Fallout by now, but Henry Cavill being John Lark, I think, is such a great villain. And you see in that moment, like, him finally letting his guard down and being vulnerable when he, like, reveals to who he thinks is Solomon Lane, but it's actually Benji, that he is who he is. And I also love how Christopher McQuarrie completely stripped down the visual style of Rogue Nation to something much more grounded and gritty, but ends up feeling even huger and more destructive, especially those last couple of seconds when you think the bombs might go off and Ethan has to like climb up the cliff to get to the detonator. Again, this changes all the time. Sometimes Dead Reckoning is my favorite and sometimes Fallout is my favorite, but Fallout is one of the best action movies ever made. It's already, I think, a modern classic. Every single scene and line, the script is just perfected. The cast, again, Rebecca Ferguson always being a standout here. But yeah, that wraps up my countdown. What a ride it's been. I'm gonna miss these movies. It's great to see this series go out on such a high. Maybe it's not its best movie, but still I think a marvelous experience that you should watch on the most massive screen possible. And yeah, if you've already seen Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, let me know where it sits in your ranking. And as always, stay tuned for more content here on the channel.